Welcome to Art and Scroll Studio. I'm Shelley Werner and the host of our Zoominar series, where we feature the makers and creators of Judaic art. On October 7, 2020, we had the amazing Nina Bonos as our guest. Here we are presenting to you the full episode, so in case you missed it, you can now visit with Nina as we did in October. Please follow our channel, subscribe so you can be aware of when we post new full episodes and of any upcoming episodes that are in the future. Enjoy.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming today. This is really a fantastic opportunity for me to talk to you, and I wish you were all here, that we were all together, but this is the closest we can be right now. So maybe sometime in the future we can meet in person.
We're all coming to your house, Nina. But okay, before we do, we're going to make you talk about your work. And I want to show this piece first. This is the amazing graphic that we have used to collect the attention of people from all over Canada and US. Can you explain a little bit about what the title of this piece is? Because you know I always mangle it. And explain a little bit about your thoughts in creating these panels.
Okay, so there are 7 panels here. The ones on the end are wheat and barley, and the rest are kind of obvious, I think. And these are all details from illustrations that I made in watercolor for Torah mantles. And the term 7 sacred species comes from Deuteronomy, where we're introduced to the sacred bounty of the land of Israel. And the reason this resonates with me so much is that Sonoma County is at the same latitude as the Holy Land. So you say we have a Mediterranean climate, and we also have very similar growing conditions.
And I'm showing here some pictures of your very own garden. And I believe you yourself live with the 7 sacred spheres. Is that true?
We have 5 of the 7 sacred species in our backyard. These are all pictures from our backyard. And then I have a collection of dried wheat that I've used as inspiration for these paintings. On the left, there's one of 2 60-year-old olive trees that my husband's family planted.
I want to share one more quote of yours, Nina. I have to do it. I do more than observe nature. I enter into a partnership with my plants. I think that is so beautiful. And I want to show the landscape that is representative of where you live.
So this is titled Valley of the Moon, and it was painted as one painting. And then I carefully, using an X-Acto knife to guide me, tore most of the pieces and put them back down, leaving the white space in between. And I'm interested in the path that you can take into the middle of the painting. There's your life that has come before it, and that's after. On the left, you see,
yeah, that leads us right into the life that came before. There's baby Nina.
Well, not exactly baby. I think I'm 9 years old there with a paint by numbers, which was the only one that I did. And then at 9, my dad got me my own real oil painting set.
Well, there you are as an architect, correct?
The middle is me at UC Berkeley studying architecture. And the drawing on the right is a cover illustration I did when I was working in planning. So this,
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I know that this painting is very seminal for you.
So this piece was done in 1991. My mother died a few months prior at the age of 72, quite unexpectedly. And it was very upsetting. So I did this when I was painting on location in a furniture store to attract people to come in. And my inspiration was an urn that was like 4 foot high sitting to the right of me. I was trying to figure out what to paint. And all I was doing was just looking at the textures that were in the urn and painting it. And I don't know if you can see what looks like a figure in the middle in gold, and it looks to me like somebody with their arms raised, like they're ascending from earth to the heavens. And it's like, to me, the question was, what is this life all about anyway? And so after I did this piece, I realized I needed to not just create spiritual paintings, I needed to create Jewish paintings. So this was one of the first ones, actually in 1993. And I did pictures of drawings of a tree for a year before this. This represents my mother. I did it in Mediterranean tones. There's salt on the leaves. And then it says, it's a tree of life to those who grasp it with high in the middle, right underground. And even though it's a real happy piece, it reminds me of the fact that my mother grew up in Nazi Germany and her Judaism was underground. And so I didn't want mine, not only did I not want mine to be underground, I wanted to tell a story for myself, my family, and the world about how important Judaism is to me, and illustrate the teachings, the blessings, and my life as a Jew.
So this is a piece that is almost a revisiting of that kind of.
That tree that you just saw, which is Tree of Life 2, 20 years later, I put it in front of me and wanted to do an update. And so this is Rosh Chodesh, a Jewish women's gathering, and it's about phases. So there are 4 women in the background, and you can tell the seasons by the colors of their outfits. From left to right, there's winter, then spring, then summer and fall. And I'm summer, and because it's my favorite season of the year. And I'm on my wobble board, which is a high. A high was in the middle of the prior painting, trying to be in balance with all of my activities so that I can be strong. And all of our arms we turn into trees, and our arms are reaching toward the heavens, where there's 7 stars of David that represent the 7 days of the week. And Rosh Chodesh represents the phases of the moon. And the moon goes from full to tiny, tiny sliver, and then disappears and then comes back again. And so it's renewal.
I'm going to take you from a reminiscence of your mother to something that I know reminds you of your father.
So this was created 13 years later when my father was in his last few weeks of cancer treatment. And it's called Joseph's Coat, a garment of light and light and glory.
But what I want to point out here, Nina, and I think it's interesting to see, is that this is a collage. See this ripped paper here? This is actually an assemblage.
So the difference between this and the Valley of the Moon painting that I had at the beginning was the Valley of the Moon was painted as a painting, ripped up and put back down in the same places where the pieces were. This was pieces that I painted knowing that I was going to do this. And what do you know, the yoke of this is a vest, and it was actually a pattern from a vest I wore. And the yoke looks like the sun's rays. This is Joseph, it refers to Adam and Eve and the coat of light that Adam was given. And so then the stripes on the left top transform into the Garden of Eden. And there's an apple in that tree, which if you think about it, is where the heart would be. This would be the garment that I would put on my father when he would be gone. And so
I'm going to, so I know that that's about history, and I know I'm moving us forward, but I know that this calla lily piece has a lot to do about movement as well, about the movement. Yes.
6 years ago, we moved from a house where we had been for 33 years to where we are now. And the calla lily is a symbol also of renewal, because it dies out in the winter and comes back in the spring. And I have 3 mezuzahs on the stems of either the flower or the leaves, that Jews have been a people that have been on the move because of all the persecution that we've faced. And so if we don't have buildings that we can take with us, what do we do to remind us? What artifacts can we take? So these strong stems remind me of building columns. And the one these are 3 mezuzahs that were important in my family. The one in the middle is a copper one, it's a facsimile of a copper one that I made when I was 10 years old. It was on our house when I was growing up. When we sold the house
I went ahead a little too fast, sorry. But I do want to show that that calla lily piece leads artistically into this stylization of this piece. And this piece is absolutely stunning.
So this again has family heirlooms in it. The Seder plate is scalloped edges is from the Seder plate that I grew up with which was from Israel. The Kiddush cup was my son's. On the candles in the background, there's a shin on the upper right and a heart, and flowers growing in our garden, the camellia. And pansy always to me looks like somebody's face. And you know, in Judaism, we don't really do anthropomorphic representation. So I look for likenesses in other places.
I know that this is a very significant piece for you. I know it came at a time in your life when you were thinking of maybe making a career change. Is that a true story?
That's true. It was 2001 after we went on a trip to Israel, and I was in the middle of a possible career change, doing some job counseling, and my counselor said, why don't you wait until after you go to this trip to Israel? It could be a life-changing experience. So this was created as a logo for a Jewish women's gathering, and it's me. You saw me with long hair. So I sit between the rows of the grapes. I have my favorite earrings on, as in the painting. I live in Santa Rosa, which is the roses on the right. California, on the left, there's a poppy, which is our state flower. There's a chai in the grapevine on the left. And my tikkun olam is to bring beauty into the world through my art. And so all the leaves have changed shape to be a heart, signifying my love going out into the world through my art.
And you know what, I think it comes across so beautifully. As I said, your work is a gift to the world and it's filled with love. But I want to ask you a maker question. This is my turn. I'm asking a question here. So Nina, everything has meaning in this piece and in all your pieces. Is your process to come up with, I'm going to do a painting about this aspect and I'm going to put it in there, or do you do the art and then find the meaning after?
There'll be other pieces that you will see where I start out with an idea and then I go on and I've been meditating twice a day for 47 years. So when I meditate, I get a lot of inspiration. When I sleep, this is another one where there's so many symbols in there. It's just amazing. So this was again after that trip to Israel, and my whole life I was always wondering. They always say if you live a good life, you'll be inscribed in the book of life. Well, what does the book of life look like? So I start doodling, and I see that I can make a book, not a scroll, a book that looks like Chai. And then on the right and left sides, they're talit. If you look, those are Jacob's ladders in orange, and you look through them and you see views from the old city of Jerusalem. There's God's omniscient eye at the top. Inside the tablets, you see the Sinai desert and palm trees and Italian cypress.
Nina, there's so much meaning in your work. I wonder, when you go to the bank and you have to sign your name, does it have like a whole story embedded into it? Because so much of your work is there isn't anything on this paper that I'm sure doesn't have meaning. So we've gone now to something that I know is seminal for you and has great import. And I know it has a marriage that has to do with California and your Judaica. Is that right?
Yeah. So on this trip to Israel, we were in New York, and I retrieved a phone message asking me to join a competition to design a logo for a Jewish street festival in Palo Alto. So this piece was created for that. And it's, I don't know, there's probably hundreds of pieces there. Again, there's a shin in the upper reach of the palm tree on the left. The squiggly line looks like the sand and the surf and the sea of California, but it's actually from a mosaic that we climbed to Masada, and that's the shape of a form in a mosaic there.
I think you mentioned the shards, I think.
Oh yeah, so science was really important to me growing up. It's one of the reasons I didn't go to just do art school. So when I was trying to figure out the colors for this Jerusalem stone. I had some shards from a archaeological dig that we went on, and I actually retrieved them and put them on my paper and mixed up the colors for that. So there's the Dome of the Rock and the Western Wall, and there's Shalom on the bird's wings if you turn your head sideways, and again a Chai, which is an entrance into the old city.
I do want to interrupt you, but I do want to invite people to send questions to Michelle Questions so that we can ask Nina some if it does occur to you. So don't forget to send those in to Nina.
So this was a marriage between, anyway, when I did that piece and was at that show, it was in 2001, I met a Judaic shop owner who told me that I must join the American Guild of Judaic Art. That was 20 years ago. And so I've met Judaic artists from all over the country, and we're in constant communication. They have a great website. It's jewishart.org. I hope you will check it out.
That's how we found you, my dear, under the
Yeah,
B.
jewishart.org. So on the, it's a great educational website.
Here we see some amazing pieces that involve collage.
So the piece on the left is called Tikkun Olam Now, and that's because the center part that has both these pieces have recycled metals, but on the right, the recycled metals wound around tree branches, which signifies saving the environment. And behind that, there's the Shema and the Ve'ahavta. It's the same cloth that's inside a mezuzah. And then for Tikkun Olam, it's God's love and light that was contained in a ceramic vessel. And there's shards of watercolor, I call them shards, but it's watercolor triangles there. And there's Egyptian papyrus on the bottom, handmade paper. A lot of that paper I've painted. I paint paper like fabric, so I know I'm going to tear it up. And the one on the left has some of the same movement to it. The little Torah that's there, I made probably a couple hundred of those. They were good for small gifts for people for bar and bat mitzvahs. And there's another kind of Egyptian papyrus top and bottom.
It looks like also that you've used pieces of found objects. You've got found paper in there. It looks almost like wallpaper. Are you a paperaholic?
I am a paperaholic. In my studio, I have two large drawing files. One has all my paintings, and the other has different papers arranged drawer by color.
I would like to see that drawer. I just want to correct what I might have said. Send your questions to Michelle Questions, not to Nina. I may have said that wrong. So there we are. There's a picture that has a lot of impact in your life. Tell us a little bit about this.
So this is our garden again. So last year, this picture in front of the pomegranate tree was last year. We had 65 pomegranates. Some people have pet dogs and cats. I have a pet pomegranate tree. It's really meaningful to me. That one is about 7 years old. The fig tree is upper left, and the others are similar to what we have here, just better pictures.
So it's true what you said, that you're sort of a person who cares for their flowers, their garden, as though it's their pets, but they're always coming out in your work. And talk to us a little bit about this, because this is very free form.
Yeah, a lot of what you've seen so far has been very stylized, but I also do a lot of free form, very impressionistic pieces. And this is one of a series of 3. I had a commission to do some figs, and I took figs and a big branch and strung them up between a ladder and another post. And then I have my paper underneath, and I kind of paint from the shadows. And it's really a lot of fun, especially interspersed with some of these pieces that are coming up that have that are very difficult to do.
So now talk to me about you're painting outside here, are you not?
Yeah. So I've been doing a series of what I call grape dance paintings for the last 20 years. And I celebrate the seasons by returning to the vineyards year after year at the same time, usually August and September when it's hot, but that's when the grapes are on the vines. And I call it grape dance because my brush dances across the paper, the grapes dance on the vine, and they're just really a lot of fun. So I work very spontaneously in the vineyards, then I take them home to the studio and add colored pencil and acrylic. Although some of them, I don't touch them after I've been in the studio. They just, the quick impression is the best. So.
They're very alive with movement. But now we're going to go to a whole other realm, and it's not really true. Every time I would try with Nina to say, okay, this phase and that phase, she would say to me, no, I'm doing them all at the same time. It's not like she has one phase that follows another phase. So this is a different style. How about that?
Well, it depends upon the time of the year and what's going on in my life. When I work on a painting like this, it's really nice to have the relief to go out. I mean, because I worked on this for months and months. The piece on the right, these are both Torah mantles for my synagogue in Santa Rosa, California, Shamrei Torah. So we had it, and they were done about 9 years ago. So we made a new Torah. We worked with a scribe, and then when the Torah was halfway finished, they started thinking, oh, we need a Torah mantle. So there was a competition, and I won the competition with the one on the right. And I presented that to the art committee, and they said, wow, we really like this. Would you do another one that would go together with it for our other Torah? And so that's how the other one was born.
I have to tell you, sorry, I have to tell you, so many of Nina's stories start with, so there was this competition, then I won the competition. So I think everyone in the world is as impressed.
Well, you know, I got a lot of rejection notices for the first.
Can we buy that work at a discount, the rejected ones? No, I'm just kidding.
Anyway, so there's the sun and the moon that show the change of seasons, the passage of time, and Lador Vador, the passage of the Torah from one generation to the next. There are 12 trapezoids in yellow that represent the 12 tribes of Israel. The blue stripes are from Talit, or the Israeli flag. And on the left, we have the same 7 sacred species you saw before. All of them are obvious. Wheat and barley look just the same. But honey at ancient times was from a date palm, and that's what's on the left. And it also echoes the shape of the moon, the crescent moon on the right. So this piece, you can change the slide. So this piece was transformed into a needlepoint piece by my friend Marcia Gladstone. She took 1 year, every day, 6 to 10 hours a day doing this. It's absolutely beautiful. And we worked really closely together. And so you can see on the left all the different strands of yarn. There's a great video about the making of these that's on my homepage of my website. I urge you to look at it. And then Marcia finished that, and she sewed the Torah mantles, sewed those panels onto the Torah mantles themselves.
Well, I think this is a stunning piece because doing it in needlepoint added the element of texture. And some of the piece, no? Yes? Yeah,
no, it's incredible. She even, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's so gorgeous. She put beads as the pomegranate center, the seeds.
So because I know we're going to get to some pieces that were reproduced on silkscreen or printed, but this really comes alive because of the texture. So I think it was a unique project, and also affiliation with your friend. So I know.
Well, also, I decided when I was making these that, oh my gosh, I would never be able to handle these because I don't really know how to read Hebrew very well. And I've always wanted to do a bat mitzvah. They weren't doing that for girls when I was of age. So I'm 69. So on my 60th birthday, I had a bat mitzvah all by myself, the whole hour and 3/4. I'm an artist, but I don't really sing or chant. Well, I did. And it was an incredible experience.
It must have been. So we're going to go from California to Canadian content.
Oh, yeah. So one night, like midnight, I'm looking on my phone, checking emails while I'm watching TV, and I get this email from Debbie bethisrael.ca, and I said, CA, that must be Canada. And I looked online and I realized that they were just finishing a big remodeling project for their sanctuary. And she asked me if I had made those Torah mantles. She saw the pomegranate ones, and could I do some work for them? The next day I'm on this conference call and this whole thing was born. So I made 6 Torah mantles. I took that one that was the 7 sacred species and I did them all on separate pieces. And she contacted me in April, and the finished product was installed in August. So
I'm going to show that, but before we leave this slide, I want to point out to people the beautiful menorah embedded in these leaves, as well as a Magen David that's shown on these figs. Tell me if I'm getting it wrong, Nina, but I think you've got a map of Israel going on in here.
I do. Right? That was when Scud rockets were being fired from Gaza into Israel, and I was really upset. So I decided I wanted a map of Israel in there. There's also a heart. The turquoise leaves are the ones that have the symbols. There's a heart in the top leaf. And then
so I'm going to show now what this really looks like. And I think it's just breathtaking to see how these were fabricated, and especially, sorry, go ahead.
So I made watercolor paintings that were digitized and then printed on fabric, and the fabric panels were rolled up in a tube and sent to New York, where a Torah mantle maker and I worked over the phone and internet for me to choose the color background, and then he assembled this whole thing.
Now here we have another approach to making a Torah mantle, and there we see you working with is that with the printer?
Yeah, while I was working on the Beth Israel project, I got an email from a synagogue in Napa, and they wanted to know if I could recommend somebody to make Torah mantles for them. I had made a banner for them. So I followed the same process for these. The top left is my painting, and there's some sketches next to it that I worked out with the art committee. And the other picture is me at the printer with the owner. I had some paper proofs that I was trying to match the colors. Whenever I have my things printed, I'm there at the printer making sure the colors are correct, because it's really important to me. And there's a finished product.
So now we're going to come to another commission that is in progress, but I know there's a story here about some candle people.
So this piece is called 8 Lights for 8 Nights, and it's an original, I call it a collage. It's really an assemblage, but I just that's too hard of a word to say. So all of the pieces are set forward with spacers. If you can see that if you look especially on the flames, you see to the right of that, there's a shadow. And that's my experience making architectural models comes to bear. So this is on my website, and I made a visit to a synagogue in Maryland when I was in DC for a URJ, Union for Reform Judaism, biennial conference. And this congregation in Olney, Maryland really liked that concept, because what I had written about it was that these people represented individuals, families, or nations united in peace. And they really liked that concept. And so we'll go to the next slide and you'll see how I developed that. And this is a current project that they are raising the money for. So it spans 44 feet, 22 feet on either side of the bima. So these are just mock-ups, but they will be printed on aluminum panels that are 3 by 6 feet. So the top 3 will be on the left of the bima, the bottom 3 will be on the right of the bima. There's a lot of research that went into this. Let's see, so on the top row, the one to the extreme right, the two candles in the middle to me represent Adam and Eve. So I did some research and I found that Adam could be represented by the colors red, which is the color of the earth, and red and green, the color of growing things, black and white. And then I didn't find any reference for Eve's, and I decided she should be red and purple. Then there's two candles, if you move to, so panel 6, there's two candles that are silver, gold, and copper, and those represent Shabbat candles. And then if you look at the bottom, panel 6 all the way to the right and panel 1 all the way to the left, what do you know? Those candles have talit on them. So they're and there are two, so there's 18 and 18 is 36. You know, 18 is a magic number in Judaism, represents high or to life. And so that's how many are the total number of candles. They wanted it to look like the people were moving across the room. And so I've grouped them that way. I'm trying to think of what else is in here. Anyway, it was a lot of research, and it's art by committee.
And I was going to ask you about that, but first I'm going to show the mock-up that you did to show how it would fit in the shul itself.
So one time when I had this 8 Light for 8 Nights painting at a exhibit, that a booth that I was in San Francisco, somebody walked by and they said, "Oh, those look like people with brightly colored robes walking through the desert." So the color of the background changed through the art committee review, and now it looks like the desert, which goes into my original thought. I have the blue sky, which is, indicates expansiveness. So I'm hoping that this will be realized sometime soon.
It's amazing, but I think talking about people going through the desert and talking about how your work often reaches so far back into biblical times and biblical references is the right time to look at the papyrus that you are working with. Tell us about this new kind of.
This is the current project that I'm working on. I did this Shema Yisrael piece several years ago, and I've always wanted to do the whole thing. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So now I have a commission where somebody wants me to do that whole thing, and the background will be Egyptian papyrus, which is what you see on there. And I think we need to look at the next slide. Oh, so that's the piece that I had done a long time ago that I really
This is the piece you're working. This is how you're making it.
So this is how I make it. So a lot of those pieces that you saw that were cut up like the candle people, I paint paper like it would be what you would think of as fabric, and then I cut it up. And sometimes I just can't cut it up. So the piece that's on my easel to the left top, that's not going to be cut up. And I knew when I showed this to the man who commissioned me that he was going to like this one the best, and he did. So I have more. Each of these pieces are 15 by 22, and it took, I made this during the beginning of the pandemic, so it's been helpful to get me to a happy place, but it's not finished, and there's quite a bit of work that goes into these.
Each one of those, Nina, each one of those is a painting that deserves to be framed. But I think people don't realize when they see something like this, where you see the individual letters that are all colored, that it actually comes out of a sheet like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And
there's been a few times where I've actually sold those pieces, or I just can't cut them up. And then other times I just have to just do it. Hold my breath.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the Noon story.
So this came about, a synagogue in Danville, California was having an exhibit on the Aleph Bet as a meditation experience. And so I chose the letter Nun, which is on the right. And everybody else took just one letter and made a painting out of it. And I decided I wanted a word. So this word is Nefesh, which means soul. And it also means breath. And if you think about it, when the breath is gone, the soul transitions. And so that's really important. I did this about a year ago, and I had no idea that breath and breathe, like as in I can't breathe, would be, or with COVID, the breath is so important. To me, I looking at this now and I think it's kind of a premonition. So the nefesh is suspended between earth and the heavens, which is a common theme for me with a lot of this work. And the spirals just show energy, just the letters are very contained, but the energy is not.
It's exuberant. I mean, even the background is exuberant, Nina. And as I said, your backgrounds could be a framed piece, but the way you position the letters, and I happen to know you're very fussy about positioning, having worked with you on this PowerPoint. Nina, a little to the left, a little to the right.
Yeah, I know.
But it's been a pleasure. And
Oh,
now
so
we come.
these pieces are also set forward with spacers. And so you get this great shadowy effect. And it's, I'm trying to do something that's, the only word that comes to mind is supernatural. I don't know, just
Spiritual.
Spiritual, exactly. Exactly.
And now we're coming to a piece that really is spiritual. And this is perhaps, believe it or not, of the whole pantheon of your work, perhaps one of my favorites because it's still in process.
So I wanted to finish this by tonight, but it's not. Has little pieces of blue tape all around. I did this just before we evacuated. We were gone for a week because the fire was within a mile of our house and it was difficult to breathe and it was very scary. But a couple of days before that, I assembled all my papers like a rainbow on tables in front of me. So I painted all of these papers, and I knew I wanted to have the 7 sacred species. And if you specialize in that, how do you do it so it's different and new all the time? So I decided I wanted to make it in the fashion of Matisse because he's one of my favorite artists and his work is so joyous. And don't we all really need joy right now? So the pieces aren't even glued down in that piece. And I had made 5 figures and I didn't, so the one on the left is me and the one on the right is my husband, and we love our garden. In addition to the trees that were pictured here, we have a real complete vegetable garden, and it's been not only providing us with food, but a lot of fun. And we just, we've been really happy, even though the world is going to hell right now. We're having a good time.
Well, I love the story that you told about you and your husband dancing, but also there was some significance to the lightning that was coming down.
Well, I didn't even think about this when I was making it. But there's 3 orange pieces. And if you look at it, it's like Dino's throwing the fireball and the one's chasing him. And I'm jumping because the fire's under me. Then wheat, I was doing wheat, listening to some jazz music. It's too boring to make it just straight lines. So I was moving with the music and put those on there. And then I thought later, oh my God, the fires that we had that started 5 or 6 weeks ago were started by lightning strikes. And so now it's wheat, but it's also the lightning strikes.
And that's a beautiful, beautiful note that leads us to today, because that's very current. But I know that we have some questions for you. I know Michelle Questions has some, and I'm sure Nina will be happy to answer. So Michelle, what have you got?
Well, first, I think on behalf of a lot of people who are making comments, there's a lot of thank yous to Nina and Shelley for such an inspiring conversation. The first question is kind of short and simple, and you may have said this at the beginning, but somebody just wanted a reminder. Where are your origins? Where did you come from?
I was born in San Francisco, and I've lived within an 80-mile radius of San Francisco my whole life. I'm a California girl through and through.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure that person will say thank you. Someone was going back to the picture with the mezuzot on the calla lilies, and they asked if you can talk a little bit more about what this particular pairing means to you and how the mezuzot inspired this particular piece.
This was actually, it started out, I worked on this for a couple of weeks. I was assembling artifacts from my family's life. I had an ivory mezuzah that was around my mother's neck as a an army nurse. I had a mezuzah that was my father's. I had some pictures. I had all kinds of objects that I was going to put into a collage. And then there's a big process that goes on when I make these things. And I thought, no, this isn't a collage. This is a finished piece. And I started thinking about the calla lilies and how of the 3 major residences where I've lived and have been most significant for me, there have been calla lilies at every one of those. And some of them I have transplanted from 2 different, from the first residence, I transplanted some to the second, and from the second, I took the first and the second to the third. I transplant a lot of plants when I move, which is not too often. It was actually to fulfill a reading through the Bureau of Jewish Education in San Francisco. 3 of those pieces that you saw were where they would do an invitational exhibit and send out readings, and artists were supposed to interpret them. And I don't know if I'm answering that, but it just kind of, oh, and the mezuzah, I didn't say this, I opened it up one day because I was really curious after looking at this for months, and I thought, what would I write as a 10 or 11-year-old? Because I remember it was like 5th grade that I made this. And inside on binder paper in pencil in my 11-year-old writing, it said, honor thy father and thy mother. And so that's what I inscribed within the leaf that was there.
Thank you so much. And you alluded a little bit to this, that we're now in a different period of COVID time, and you feel that you've had to reinvent yourself. And you did share with us a few pieces of art that you're working on. Are you thinking more of incorporating the themes of COVID into your art?
You know, I make art when I'm unhappy. The art transforms me to a happy place. And then I make art when I'm happy to record where I am. After the fires that we had in 2017, there were a lot of people making really dark art to chronicle where we are. And it's really hard to live through that. And it's really hard to live through now. There's enough there that is painful that I use my art as a vehicle to find joy and happiness. I mean, this piece that you see here on the screen right now, I'm going to do a whole series like that. I didn't know what that was going to be. An hour and a half, you know, that's an hour and a half of cutting all those shapes. I made myself move quickly. And so it's really fresh. I didn't know that that's what it was going to be. And I had no idea it was about the fire until I started, you know, now it's taken me hours to painstakingly lift all these pieces up, mark where they are, and then put them back down. And so for me, there is dark places in some of my pieces, but I transform it. You know, there's enough pain and suffering out there. I look for the happiness. Today I saw a spider web that caught ashes in it, and I took a picture of it and put it on Facebook, and I said, when times are dark, my duty is to find beauty every day.
Wow. And I think that your finding joy has seeped into all our hearts tonight, and I think a lot of people will go to sleep with a joyful feeling. I've got a few more here. Somebody shared that they themselves aren't artistic, so they were very interested in your thought process when you're hiding, you know, images of the maps of Israel and the words shalom. What's the thought process that goes into hiding those things into other images?
Well, I think it started, I don't know if I was 12 or 13. There was an artist whose work I saw in Life magazine who had a daughter named Nina, and he hid her name, Nina, in all of his
Hirschfield. He's
okay.
a cartoonist.
And that really impressed me. Then also, you know, I grew up in the time I was in high school in 1969 during the Summer of Love, and went to the Fillmore maybe once or twice. But all of the art that came out of that, there was a big exhibit at the De Young Museum called The Summer of Love a couple of years ago, and I went and saw it, and I thought about how all of these words were written in flowing shapes, and how I designed some things like that actually in high school. And I think that really affected me. I also like, especially if you think of somebody who's meditated for 47 years twice a day, that's an incredible amount of time. So I'm used to going deeper beyond the surface. I mean, that's what really inspires me with interpersonal relationships. I don't like just surface discussions. I really like to get to the heart of the matter. And there's always different things to see. I get really excited when I just think about it. I have a lot of enthusiasm, and I have to kind of tame it.
I think your joy and your enthusiasm for all manner of exploration of art comes across in all the ways you're constantly inventing yourself and inventing your work. And that is inspiring. And before we go to the last question, I want to mention to people that Nina's work is available for purchase. She sells her work, and it's very reasonably priced. And I believe we have in the chat posted Nina's website address, right, Michelle?
I will get there. Yes, I will get there. You want me to ask the last question and then I'll post that?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to advise people to give some thought to taking down Nina's contact information. And now, what is the question?
Okay, so the last question, somebody asked that they were seeing that your pieces that you're presenting here are unframed, and they're interested if you could expand on the process of framing and how you choose the frames to match the pieces.
Well, that's a question that's evolved over 35 years of doing this. For many years, I did most of the framing myself, and now I have been very fortunate to find a wholesale framer who is extremely reasonable, and I just finished framing a lot of pieces in my own personal collection that I've had, some of them for 20 or 30 years. I'm not doing so much framing myself anymore. Smaller pieces I do. Most of my prints that I have are available at sizes that are standard sizes, either 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20. Those are all pieces where you could go and get a ready-made frame, and then the larger pieces require custom framing. But price is always on my mind. I want everybody to be able to afford my art. I have you can buy Bonos art from $4 on up. It's available.
Talk just for a moment for me. Tell me about your commissions. Is that a part of your work that you love doing, or do you find it challenging? What's it like to work with a committee?
Well, when I work with a committee, I like to have one person who's the spokesperson. And if that person is strong and guides the committee, it's a more smooth process than if it's not. I think my background in architecture makes me a good candidate for that, because I realize that, art isn't there when it's, especially some of these bigger projects, it's not just whimsy, it's something that has to fulfill a design function and a social function. Like in the case of the Candle People, it expresses a sense of community. It reflects a sense of place lots of times it gives people a feeling of identity. I think that, I've been doing commissions for 3 decades. In the very beginning, I used to worry a lot about whether they were going to like it or not. And my iPhone is a great a great tool, because I send pictures to people along the process. If they're here locally, they come and they choose papers and colors, but I also have done a lot of that just totally over the internet.
Well, I know that from looking at your work and talking to you about it, I know how amenable you are. And you always find that when people make suggestions or they ask for things, you find it an enhancement of the process, not an obstacle to the process. That's what I've seen you express, maybe.
I try to move in that direction. Sometimes it takes more effort than others, but you know, it's really easy to complain and say this is a problem, and I just try to go with it. It's sometimes a rough road. Sometimes people really have great ideas. And what is so much fun, especially when I was working with Debbie at Beth Israel, we were working together. She made 2 trips here from Vancouver to just north of San Francisco. Each visit was 5 hours. But we just really got along. And so she was here and we picked some things out, and then I would do sketches and I would send them to her, and she'd say, well, put a few more lines in and do a little bit of this. And, you know, it enhanced the process. That's not always the case, but more and more now, as I have a lot of confidence in my work from doing it for so many years, people say, well, I'd like to give you ideas, but I don't want to tie your hands behind your back. And so, you know, I try really hard to please people, but I'm getting much more confident and competent. And I've turned a few commissions away because I didn't want to do them. And I don't know, I do my best.
Well, I think that's a really great summary statement, Nina. You do your best, but you do way more than your best. And you infuse you do. And you were infused, once you've done your best, you then do it better. And I've seen that in your progression of your work. And I want to take a moment and thank you so much for joining us. It's a dream come true for us to be able to speak with you. You really are a leader in your field. And I feel privileged to have heard the backstory behind so many of your beautiful pieces. So
Shelley, it's been such a joy working with you. It's added so much. I'm going to be really sad that just like when I do commissions and I make friends all over the world, really. And we work together for a few weeks or a few months or sometimes a few years. And then the project's finished. And a lot of times I feel really sad. So I hope that we can be in touch as an ongoing thing.
We can still text 20 times a day.